Hi everyone, it's me. I've decided to make videos and crochet at the same time so everyone can kind of get a feel about how I relax and and also to bring to light a couple of other things that I've done to um, get through my assaults, different types of treatments, therapies, different avenues I've taken in order to um, face it head on, deal with it, etc., etc., etc. So, one thing I learned at the VA while I stayed inpatient for, I think it was a couple of months. I stayed there in 2015 and then again in 2018. So, inpatient and went through a number of classes, dialectical behavior therapy, and all that. And also, I got one on one with a therapist who was so fantastic. Just love this woman. It's the therapy that I went through in order to talk about my assault was called cognitive processing therapy, and it is it's for anyone who has suffered any type of trauma. But for me, I'll kind of explain what it's all about. So after I was raped, I didn't talk about it, and what I was told when you deal with the trauma and you the trauma is meant to be talked about so it can flow out, so it can be released and released from imprisoning you. But if you don't process your trauma and it gets stuck, you can start to have irrational thoughts, feelings, beliefs, etc. about who you are and your existence in this world and your day-to-day life. So what cognitive processing therapy does, it did for me, was I signed up with my therapist, got my book. It's a manual you work through. And one of the first questions she asked me was, why do you think this happened to you? And I said, I don't know, because I would never harm anyone. And so you have to start talking about the beliefs that you've held as a result of your trauma. So one of my beliefs was that I was trash, I wasn't good enough, no one would ever love me. Another irrational One of my irrational fears is that every time I was out in public and let's say I was in a parking lot or walking into the VA, if a stranger walked behind me or I saw someone in the parking lot, I immediately had a panic attack because I thought I was going to get raped or that person was going to attack me. So I would literally freeze up. I would look at my cell phone, pretend I had to text someone, and allow that person to walk around me. Um, where I used to work, the mailboxes were behind me and a lot of documents were behind me. So people would have to come into my space to grab their mail or whatever. And so they all knew that under no uncertain terms should they walk behind me without letting me know, giving me a heads up, etc. So it's just one of those things. So in cognitive processing, you go through a workbook. I was with a therapist by myself, and part of the therapy is that you have to write down your trauma beginning to end. So I think mine was 14 pages long, but you write down your trauma beginning to end and you read it out loud to your therapist. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes 2 hours, etc. But you have a block of time where you're allowed to just talk. You have to read your story and get through it and cry. And it doesn't matter you just get through it. And so then you talk about that, and then you continue to talk about the choices that you've made as a result of your trauma that are irrational. So you become judge and jury. But in the meantime, the next time, you see your therapist after you write down and read your trauma the first time, they say, okay, now you're going to write it down again, front to back, but you're going to include the sights, the smells, the sounds, anything regarding to do with the senses. you have to incorporate that into your story as well, into your, your trauma. So you go through all of that, and then after you recognize all of your stuck points, your irrational fears, your irrational behaviors, how you act out as a result of your trauma, now you have to become judge and jury. So let's just say I am in a parking lot and I see, someone who's not known to me, and I believe this person's going to rape me. You're gonna, you're almost gonna act like you're in a trial setting where you'd have to present evidence for your case and against your case. So you're the attorney for the defendant and for, et cetera, et cetera. So for the, both sides, you're going to weigh out both sides. So you're going to be on the hot seat, and then you'll have the defendant's attorney coming after you, and then you're going to have your attorney asking you questions. So you are going to be asked, well, how do you know this person's going to attack you? Well, can you give me a reason why? Can you, you just outweigh the truths compared to the the falsities or the lack of truth. So you come to a place where you start coming back to the truth of it all, and that means that breaks you free from the false beliefs that you hold about your life and your situation. So you're allowed to start being your own judge and jury. You're allowed to bring yourself back to a place of, you're able to talk yourself down, like you're standing on the roof or you're standing on a bridge, and what you're doing is you're simply talking yourself down from jumping. And that's just the way it is. You are normalizing your situation and calming yourself down. So all I know is it takes time. Cognitive processing therapy for me was the absolute most difficult, because it was the first time I had talked about my rape in full, every single detail of my rape. Not just once, but twice. It is exhausting. I think you go a week between sessions, so you have a week to write it. It's not like you can actually sit down and write it and within an hour. It's like you're writing your book. So you take your time, you write your book, and then you go through what you have to go through in order to finally put some of those fires out and finally bring your self-worth up, finally believe that you are, that you're valid, you're worthy, that you're not trash, you are not less than because you've had this experience. It's just a therapy that you go through in order to start to be whole again and start to go back and find joy in your life. So along with the crocheting and the therapies I've been through, I've been offered medication in order to deal with anxiety and PTSD and all that. And I found I've taken meds and I feel numb when I'm taking them. And sometimes you take a new one and it's just hard to wake up. So I've decided a while ago, as someone who doesn't really drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, as someone who is free and clear of meds, that has gotten through life without numbing myself, I have told a lot of doctors this medication doesn't work for me. I feel like a zombie. I would rather feel all feelings, whether they're positive or negative, happy, sad, etc., than feel no feelings. And before, when I was working, I couldn't be numb or feel like as if I couldn't function at work. So I don't know what I did to get through without meds. I know a lot of people take meds. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with meds. However, whatever someone uses to cope is what they have at the moment. But for me, I've never had those types of addictions, nor did I want to get caught up in that. So I didn't go in that direction. So I just wanted to say, to each their own. I was inpatient twice. I have taken many different classes. I have gone through many different types of therapies, but cognitive processing therapy was very beneficial for me. And I think it can be beneficial for others who have suffered from a trauma, especially the type of trauma that you are ashamed to talk about, because it forces you to face your worst nightmares and your fears, and brings it to life so you can put it to death over time. So just want to talk about that. I hope my words help someone. I hope you know that you one day will find joy in your life. You will find peace. You will have moments of happiness and joy. And all of the therapy you go through, as long as you do the hard work, it's completely worth it. Because even if you still have PTSD, or you still suffer from anxiety or panic attacks, to be able to manage that and calm yourself down and recognize and acknowledge that you're not feeling well and you need to go home, I think it's really important to be able to get to that point. So, anyways, just want to talk about that. I hope it helps someone. Um, and I hope everyone's doing okay. And I'll talk with you soon. Bye bye.